Welcome everyone to the November meeting of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. At this moment I'll ask if everyone would please rise while Mr. Mckevitt leads us in the pledge to the flag. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Gerard?
Here.
Mr. Mcdevitt?
Here.
Ms. Braemar? Here. Mr. Brock?
Here.
Mr. Mcdonald?
Here.
Mrs. Fraser? Here. Mr. Simpson?
Here.
Mr. Bansal? Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Mr. Merlino?
Here.
Mr. Strauss?
Here.
Ms. Seaver? Here. Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. Monty?
Here.
Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Here. Mr. Garrety? Here. Chairman Conover?
Here. You should all have received the minutes of our October 20 meeting. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes. Motion to approve. Mr. Gerard on the motion. Mr. Thomas on the second. Any further discussion on the minutes? There being none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. At this time, I will declare a public hearing open on the Warren County Sewer District Industrial Park Assessment Roll, and I will request the clerk to read the notice of the public hearing.
The Warren County Sewer District Industrial Park has completed its annual assessment of the cost of the increase and improvement of facilities apportioned to the Warren County Sewer District by reason of the intermunicipal agreement for South Queensbury Avenue Sewer District. A benefit to tax roll for 2018 has been completed showing the annual assessment on the lots and parcels of land in the Warren County Sewer District in proportion to the benefit which each lot or parcel will derive therefrom. The assessment roll describes each lot or parcel of land in such a manner that it may be ascertained and identified and shows the name or names of the reputed owner and owners thereof, together with the aggregate amount of assessment levied upon each parcel of land. A copy of said assessment roll is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the below stated address and may be viewed on the Warren County website. Pursuant to Resolution Number 419 of 2017 adopted by the Warren County Board of Supervisors, a public hearing will be held at the Warren County Board of Supervisors at the Board of Supervisors Meeting Room in the Warren County Municipal Center, 1340 State Route 9, Queensbury, New York, on the 17th day of November 2017 at 10 a.m., at which time and place said Board of Supervisors will hear and consider any objections that may be made to the assessment roll.
Is there anyone here wishing to address the board regarding this matter? There being none, I will close the public hearing. At this time, I will declare a public hearing open on the 2018 tentative budget and request the clerk to read the notice of the public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that the budget officer of the County of Warren has prepared and filed a proposed budget for the fiscal year 2018, and the Board of Supervisors will meet in the Supervisors Room at the Warren County Municipal Center on the 17th day of November 2017 at 10 a.m. for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the tentative budget of the County of Warren for fiscal year beginning January 1, 2018, and that at such hearing any person may be heard in favor of or against the tentative budget as compiled or against any items contained therein. Copies of said tentative budget are available at the Office of the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors in the Warren County Municipal Center, where they may be inspected or procured by any interested person during regular business hours and may be viewed on the Warren County website. Pursuant to Section 359 of the county law, the maximum salaries that may be fixed and payable during the year 2018 to members of the Board of Supervisors and to the chairman thereof are hereby specified as follows. Members of the Board of Supervisors, $17,286 each. Chairman of the Board, $21,437. Further notice is hereby given that the following is a summary of the tentative budget of the Warren County for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2018. Gross appropriations of $152,796,937, less estimated revenues not including sales tax credit and surplus appropriated amounting to $109,118,690, leaving a balance of $43,678,247 to be raised by taxation.
Alrighty, I'll now ask the public, is anyone here wishing to address the board regarding the 2018 budget?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Loeb. Ladies and gentlemen, includes members of the board. Mr. Chair. First, I want to say I'm happy to be coming back, and I thank my Glens Falls 4th Ward Supervisor, Jim Brock, for being so gracious in allowing me to take these past 4 years off. Thank you, Jim. Elected officials are elected by their district, members of their district, to do their job in running the government of their community. Thus, the members of the Board of Supervisors have been elected by their district voters to run the county. Now, you actually don't, while you're doing a lot of work, you're actually not standing at the gas pump calibrating it, as our supervisor of weights and measures does. You're not running the court system. You're not out fixing the bridges, etc. While you have a lot of jobs, they can be distilled down into two categories. One is to hire the best people possible to do those jobs, and we have a large bureaucracy of very talented people. So the first job, well, not one of the jobs, both are equal, to hire the best people possible to fill those jobs. And the other job is to give them the resources and tools to do the jobs. And that's what you're voting on today, the budget, is to give the proper resources to the bureaucracy, which, again, is large, and they're very talented. They do a lot of work. So I trust you've done, Mr. Thomas, and I'm not sure who the budget director is. You're still doing the budget? You did a good job in the past. I trust you've sorted through that thoroughly. And I trust the members of the Board of Supervisors to follow through in discussing it. So that's the second part of your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else, Mr. Whitehead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to talk about the budget again today. And first of all, I guess what I'd like to say is I think Frank Thomas did as good a job as anybody could do in this room bringing you this thing. But to me, it says one thing, and that the ends do not meet. The ends do not meet. We have had to go to surplus again in a big way. $3.7 million, of which $1.2 million was out of the general fund. And this is a trend. I mean, we peaked back in 2015, and we haven't made ends meet since then. And what I really like to talk today is not about the budget, because it's just a reflection of reality, is what it is. But to look at what it means in the broader context, because we shouldn't be talking about this just one day a year. Nothing's going to change in this one day. It has to be looked at over the entire year, and that's where things can change. And for that reason, and I wasn't the one that brought it up, but when you met on November 3rd, Supervisor Montesi brought up the fact, where's our 5-year plan, and how does this look, and in context, where are we going? He was told at that time that that plan was not available, but it would definitely be made available before you were asked to vote on it. Well, I asked that question 24 hours ago, where is it? And I was told it wasn't ready. And just literally seconds ago, Chairman Conover and I got a copy of that 5-year plan handed to us. So bear with me if it takes me a few seconds to look through this, as I'm looking at it for the first time. And I hope you have copies in front of you, because it's probably the best document. But you can see that in our unreserved fund balance, which is the thing that everyone targets, the state controller, your auditor, everything else, to really reflect the health of the government, peaked in 2015 and has come down in actuality in 2016, and is estimated to go down every year thereafter on out to 2021. And it's a pretty grim picture. So your budget today is not the question, is not the problem, but is, ends do not meet, and how will you ever make them to meet? You took full advantage of the tax cap. You left only, of the millions of dollars, you left $81,000 on the table. So you got that for next year on top of whatever the state will say. That's not very much. So you did look at the budget, and you cut $688,000 out of roads, which I'm not particularly happy about. But, if that's what you need to do to make ends meet, that's what you need to do. But going forward, it shouldn't be roads that are being cut. You know, it should be other things that we'll question over time. But what's probably the most scary thing is that these are good times. I mean, we have record sales tax receipts, and the future estimate thinks that that'll continue. But if we run into, you know, a crash, stock market crash, or any sense that people will stop coming up and spending their tourism dollars here, you all know that this can go in the toilet in a hurry. So, you know, that's something to be concerned about. And while the state controller says that you are not in fiscal danger today, that's good news, right? You've got 14% of your expenditures available in the undesignated fund still, and the threshold is at 10%. So if you get much lower than that, you are going to show up on this statewide report that says you're in physical stress, and that's not a very good report card to be on. By comparison, the town of Queensbury is at 54%, you're at 14%. Somewhere in the middle is probably a comfortable spot. And what we're forecasting here is that you will be in physical stress. You will be on that state report. It will be blasted through the Post-Star and Times Union and everything else, that unless something is done. So, you know, what happened in 2016 that started setting this the wrong way might be called spilt milk if I bring up, you know, certain things. But on the other hand, if you don't think about the mistakes you made in the past, there's little chance you're going to correct those mistakes in the future. And the one glaring thing to me is the $1 million that's spent for the next 20 years for that, what's now an empty building over here, on time, under budget, or on budget, only because the budget's been changed and the timeline's been changed. Yet, I haven't heard, you know, we have gone ahead and filled that completely. We have our second judge, our second family court judge, and I haven't heard anybody squawking about the fact that this isn't built is causing any problems. But you're going to be carrying that load for the next 20 years. So that's one mistake that was made. Water over the dam. But, you know, you've got to think about these things when they're coming up to you. You punted on, you know, a proposition from the airport FBO. He said he could save you over $400,000 a year. Nothing has happened going forward on that for the better part of a year. That's a big chunk that could help you there. These are the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about and talking about year long, because right now, the one thing that this budget says, again, is ends do not meet. And what this plan says is that they will not meet. In fact, if you look at it, they're going to get worse in a big hurry. I mean, it's showing going from 20 million to 19 to 17 to 13 to 10 to 6. This is all without a recession. Big problems here, and not to be confined to discussions today. Today, pass the budget. I mean, what else do you have to do? All is being done today is say, ends did not meet. Nothing else you can do about it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Please state your name.
My name is George Weinshank. I'm from the town of Bolton. Got here a little late because all the doors were locked. I had to walk all around. I'm assuming this is the public comment period.
Yeah.
And I just have a few things that I wanted to go into. I mean, the gentleman brought up the court over there, and here's a Mr. Golden opportunity on that. There's a shorter space. You probably should have put a second story over the court, which would have lined up with this floor. And it would have been a fraction of the cost of doing anything else. And the reason I bring that up is not that I'm being critical of that, but just don't look ahead on a thing. You did a study on the traffic problem out here. That probably is what the other 100 studies. Has anything been done? No. Traffic getting worse? Yes. I've been asking for a traffic light right down here where you get off the Northway coming south for 20 years. One time I came by this summer and the traffic was backed up probably a mile down the Northway. Now that's not your problem, but it is your problem. If you would lean on the state and start screaming and hollering, maybe we would get things done. If you look at the Adirondack Northway now, you're going to see all the patches that were done out there. You know why they were done? I called the state 21 times, every week. I report the potholes, and every week I went through every single pothole on all the state roads and on the Northway. Then I started calling Albany. 21 phone calls later, we got them fixed. Not all of them, but they're better. You notice the mile markers are back on the Northway? They took them down. Nobody knows why. So what I did is I reported the pothole by the oak tree, across from the pine tree, next to the maple tree. Well, we can't go by that. Well, that's all that's there. Amazingly, the mile markers came back. Not all of them. The 10th of a mile markers are not back, but at least we got some of them back. A lot of the problems that we're incurring now, to give you an idea, I've had wheel alignments done on my car. Every time I go down to Otto, they throw a wheel alignment check on it because you come from the North Country. I've spent $870 in wheel alignments in the last 2 years. Why? Because our roads are getting so bad. All of these roads are classified by the state if it's a state road. The classification on that road tells you when that road is supposed to be repaved. The Northway should have been repaved years ago. It isn't. It's patched. 9N was patched. That's a disgrace, the job they did on 9N. The potholes are coming back already. And the plant is closing for the blacktop. So we're going to be all winter long going through potholes again because 9N was not paved when it was supposed to. You people, and I'm not blaming you, you didn't do the work. It's not your job. But it is your job to scream and holler at these officials, get off their butt and start doing that. There was a report on TV which absolutely infuriated me, and that's why I started going after the state. The head of DOT get caught in traffic every night going home from New York City on the Kosciuszko Bridge. They took all of our money for 2 years to build a new Kosciuszko Bridge so she won't get caught in traffic. And I know you all trust the news, what's on the television, so that had to be honest. But what I'm saying, it took me almost 6 months to convince New York State that we didn't secede from the state. We're still part of New York State. We pay our taxes. We pay our gasoline taxes for repair of the roads. And what are we doing? We're building a Kosciuszko Bridge so somebody won't get caught in traffic. That, to me, is ludicrous. And we never should have let that happen. We should have stood up and screamed a long time ago. And we can't. We just can't sit back and let government run amok, do whatever they want. It's our money, and we want responsible spending of our money. I understand the county is tight on money. But again, if we give you all the money you need, all it is another cookie jar like the bed tax. The bed tax law was written, and I opposed it when it was written for the simple reason there was no limits on what you could do with the bed tax. There isn't a thing you can name that I can't tie into the bed tax that's eligible for funds. I'm amazed that we haven't redone the sewer plant in Lake George. The tourists create a lot of the sewerage, use bed tax money. I mean, that's how badly that was written. And it bothers me. I like it when you're running at a deficit because you're squeezing every penny out of the money we can do. If you were running at a surplus, that incentive is not there. So it really doesn't bother me that you're running at a deficit. I'd like to see it closer to zero, but it doesn't bother me that you're running at a deficit because it's making us use the money wisely. And that, to me, is more important than having you in a surplus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weinshank. Anyone else wishing to address the board regarding the 18 budget? There being no one, I will close the public hearing. Report to Chairman of the Board. It's been an extremely busy month. We had many committee meetings, budget meetings. On October 26th, I attended Intercounty, a very interesting meeting. On October 27th, shared services. October 31st, we had an emergency services meeting. If you had a chance to attend that emergency service meeting, it was quite an eye-opener, and I don't think there's any question that going into 2018, emergency services are going to be on the top of the list in terms of what we're going to be doing regarding that going forward. On November 1st, I attended a workshop at the college. It was a very interesting workshop conducted by the president. And on November 2nd, I had various committee meetings. We had a special board meeting, of course. November 8th, 9th, and 14th, I attended committee meetings. November 15th, I attended the court team meeting, which I think Mr. Gerard and Mr. Montesi, I'm sure, will speak about today. And that concludes my report. Report of committee chairman for the past month's activities. Mr. Mckevitt.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Braemar.
Thank you. I am not a chairperson at this time, but I do have a report about the Johnsburg cleanup. The tanks were removed from the property Monday. So that was a good part. They still have some work to do there, but I want to thank Acting Supervisor Gene Arsenal for his assistance with the prior landowner there, and also to DEC for acting quickly and getting the tanks out before the weather turned badly. There are some resolutions from the Environmental Concerns Real Property Committee, and I want to specifically address 436. The public auction went very well, and you can see on the back of 436 the amount of money that we collected to cover the taxes was good this year. And the last thing that I want to address is the position of county attorney. It's a very important position, and it should be thoroughly vetted. The interviews that we had on Tuesday were initial interviews that lasted for 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Ms. Braemar, I would ask that you, we appreciate your remarks. I would ask that you hold them until we get to resolutions where we will have discussion and or debate at that time.
I would like to make this comment because I have other comments about the resolution, and this is about bringing the resolution to the floor, which I don't see an opportunity in the agenda for me to make that comment.
I will afford you every opportunity to regarding that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Brock.
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Mcdonald.
I do not chair a committee, and I do not have a committee report. Thank you.
Supervisor Fraser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health, Human, and Social Services met on October the 24th. Mr. Rob York, Director, Office of Community Services, had a panel presentation on the opioid crisis by the Hometown versus Heroin and Addiction Coalition, which was did a wonderful job of explaining it to us. We listened to the 4 people who participate in those programs, so I thought it was just great. We all kind of learned a lot from that. And then we had Maureen Smith from the Office of DSS. And the one thing there, she has been providing us an overview of the services through her the assistance unit, which assisted hundreds of residents in obtaining temporary benefits, which she's been doing that so we have a better idea of what's happening, which I think has been good for all the members on the committee, because otherwise you kind of sit there and you're not exactly sure what happens there. Other than that, it was basically just some housekeeping, but we have resolutions 438 to 442 as a result of those meetings, and just dealing with county disaster with the mental health response, authorizing renewal of lease agreements, existing lease agreements with Cedars, ratifying the actions of the chairman of the board in executing a grant application, and then amending resolution number 508 and 216, which was amended by resolution number 49 of 2017 and 407 of 2017. So those are all. And then we met, support services met also on October 24th. It was a very short committee meeting. We only had a couple of people. We had Mike Colvin, who had just like one thing that needed to be done, and we had Amanda Allen, clerk of the board, who had a request for a transfer of funds, and that was really about all we had on the social services. So Thank you very much.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On October 28th, the Department of Public Works Committee met. We have 4 resolutions, 443, 444, 45, and 46. The first 3 are the authorizing funding for Marchicelli funds for county bridge asbestos abatement and painting on bridges in the town of Johnsburg and Stony Creek. 444 is authorizing preliminary engineering services contract with Camp Dresser, McKee, and Smith for that bridge abatement. And 445 is awarding and authorizing agreement with the lowest bidder for the bridge preservation projects in those 2 towns. Resolution 446 was just a resolution approving a settlement agreement regarding damage to a DPW vehicle that was damaged in an accident. Other than that completes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
The Occupancy Tax Committee met on November 8th. We had one resolution come out of that, Resolution 456. It's in your packet, and it has to do with the allocations of money from the county portion of the tax. I hope everybody will support it.
Thank you. Mr. Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on November 8th. We just have one resolution, and that was to authorize the travel of personnel from tourism to in-state, out-state, and Canadian motor coach marketing. That's the only thing for tourism. Under the Charleswood Park, we have 2 resolutions, and one was to move ahead with the lowest bidder, MCJ Construction, for the water feature and some sidewalk work. And the second one is 463. It's to, we voted not to charge the state police in 2018, October 19th. They're having a pedestrian school on safety demonstration, and they needed that parking lot, so we voted on not charging them for that day. That's all I have.
You're welcome. Supervisor Strauss.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislative and Rules met October 24th, and we discussed one item, and that was the 911 surcharge revenue and distributions. And it was the unanimous opinion of the committee that the current distribution formula isn't working, that the revenues distributed to the counties should be greater to help fund the 911 systems as originally intended. Administrator Garrety has volunteered to write a draft letter to our legislative representatives concerning the split of the 911 revenues and pointing out the inequity of the current distribution. There are no resolutions on this matter before us today, and that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On November 1st, I also attended the strategic planning meeting over at the college, and Washington County held separate meetings regarding this, and it was more to talk about the goals moving forward, both from the perspective of the county, of the college, and of the students. So it was a very informative couple hours we spent together. On November 14th, we had an airport advisory meeting. There was a referral over to facilities, which Chairman Gerard will hear in the next couple weeks regarding a request for a proposal for a fly-in. Thought it was very good feedback coming from a group of volunteers. But in the idea of recognizing that transition planning is crucial, we encourage all of our department heads to do that, and also in performance evaluations of how effective our goals are, whether we be a department head or an entity or a group. We implemented that with the airport advisory group. So Supervisor Sokol is chairing up the advisory committee. Thank you, Supervisor Sokol, for taking that on and for having that continuity as you go into the new year. And also the group itself did an evaluation and found that they do feel that it is very effective. They've been able to meet several of their goals. They will review the mission statement and make any amendments to that next month. So I want to thank everyone for their service on that. That's certainly been a very productive and interesting group. Lastly, personnel met on November 2nd and November 14th. Resolutions in front of you are 448, 449, 461, and 467. We're going to continue to take applications for the position of county administrator, and would still encourage, those resumes to go forward to our HR department. We did not put an end date on that. Lastly, we have a resolution in front of you regarding the county attorney. Our goal was to have second interviews this afternoon for that position. In executive session, a decision was in fact made after a heated discussion that we would not have second interviews. Today, I would encourage members of the board to give that a second thought. In fact, it's an incredibly important position. I thank Mary for her expertise, and of course, Brian Rickenbach, who's here today. But it is a leading position within our county, and one that we fully entail to be able to have another opportunity to interview candidates. As Supervisor Braemar pointed out, they were very basic questions. There were 9 of them, and those interviews went very, very fast. In fact, we were ahead of schedule, which is rare for this board. So as your personnel chair...
Yeah, Ms. Seaver, Supervisor Seaver, I would ask if you have any any discussion regarding the resolution on the appointment, that if you could please just include any comments you have at that time. This is a report of committees. I'd like to keep it. I'd like to keep it confined to that.
So exactly what I am doing is a report from our committee. So that being said, my report is...
No, Ms. Seaver. I chair this meeting. I would ask that you hold your comments, that you please hold your comments until the resolution comes before the board.
If I could finish my sentence, it was simply that my report is concluded. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Beatty.
Wow. Seems like we're going in a kind of a bizarre direction sometimes here, Mr. Chairman. But Julie Butler is back from medical leave. She's our Director of Purchasing, and so you'll see shared services ramping up. I reached out personally to Queensbury Superintendent Doug Huntley to come up with new and innovative ways to save everybody in this room money, taxpayer money. Let's face it, Queensbury School District is the largest school district in the county, and hopefully I have a ton of respect for him and his expertise in a number of areas, and I'm hoping he can come up with some new ideas in which we can all share services between county, school districts, towns, and cities. So I'm going to be much more aggressive in reaching out, not just to Mr. Huntley, but to other superintendents, Warrensburg, and other key superintendents, because I think we have a lot of brain power sitting on the sidelines, and I'd like to have them jump in the game with us, because the more the better. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman, but I also will have some comments on the Resolution 267 if I don't get shut down. Thank you.
You will not be shut down. Mr. Montesi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Chair of Criminal Justice and Public Safety, there are 3 resolutions before the board, 433, 34, and 35. Primarily, they're software company contracts that we will be signing. The other comment that I have for criminal justice is I've asked the town board supervisors to take a look at the resolution that I passed out to you with regards to nighttime arraignment, and if you have reviewed that with your justice and town board, please get it, if it's agreeable, signed, and pass it to the district attorney for me. Brian LaFleur last month was part of a New York State Police, St. Lawrence County, Clinton, Hamilton, Essex, Warren County. They went up to Fort Covington and they did a hazardous material rail incident. It was a full-scale incident, and something that for the future, if things happen in North Creek for us, at least we have gone through one of these hazardous rail incidents. The water line is complete at the Fire Training Center, and the equipment that was stored at Sibagagi will be moved to that training center site and set up sometime this year. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance met on November 2nd. Before you are resolutions 429, 430, 450 through 453, 459, and 464 through 466. It was a pretty action-packed month as we met twice. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the resolutions, though. 459 addresses the salary and compensation plan for 2018. These are the base salaries set for the 2018 budget. Also, it shows the amounts of longevity compensation, which the employees are entitled to receive. Also, 465, we have a senior account clerk in the treasurer's office who is looking to enroll in 2 courses. They're winter courses. The total is $2,500. If she gets a C or above, we will compensate her that 50%, which is up to $1,250, not to exceed. Everything else was housekeeping for the most part, except for our continuing discussion on the opioid litigation. If you recall, last month I did a report briefly on one of the law firms who was interested in having Warren County go with their firm. The gentleman, Donald Boyajian, has a law firm in Saratoga, and he is working for the Simmons-Hanley Conroy Group. They along with the other 2, have made excellent presentations for those of you that were there. As a matter of fact, we had the 2 other presenters, the Brindisi Group and the Napoli Group. So Mary had made a list of questions which were sent out to each one of the firms, and they were concrete questions and they had concrete answers. And quite honestly, you know, it got to the point where I had to make a little spreadsheet here of pros and cons, and at the committee meeting I handed out those questions and answers, and after a long debate it was very, very tight, and like I said, they were just excellent. They did an excellent job presenting, but we came out with Resolution 466, which is in support of the Napoli Group. And for those of you that did not make the meeting, I do have the book here if anybody would like to peruse it. But hopefully, joining in at an early stage, we have a better chance of receiving more compensation if they are successful. So, and what else? Actually, I think that was it, but I would like to have Treasurer Swan come to the podium, if that's okay.
Absolutely, without objection. Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to give you some information on what I'm considering to be an early Christmas present for the county. Due to the efforts of Senator Betty Little, Chairman Conover, Supervisor Garrety, Michael McCarthy, and Attorney Larry Peltowitz, the county's appeal for the payment for the cogen project at Westmount have been approved. We have already received a payment of $489,728.64. We are anticipating by the end of this month we will receive another payment of approximately $340,000. This will total somewhere a little under $850,000 that we will be receiving payments on this. That is against what was originally anticipated was a $767,000 receivable. So we're actually getting a little bit more money than what we anticipated in the beginning of this process. And if you've got any specific questions, I'm going to turn this over to Attorney Peltowitz. He was the point man on this and has some more of the information if you've got specific questions. Thank you.
So it is very good news for the county. Let me just give a little bit of background just to put it in a frame of reference for you. As you recall, that the Department of Health had disallowed certain expenditures relating to the cogeneration facility at Westmount for the years 2009 to 2014. So it was a 6-year period, and the county had filed appeals, rate appeals, with regard to the Medicaid rate that did not include those expenditures. And so as Mike just indicated, that we received notification that the Department of Health has granted all of the county's appeals for all 6 years, that we have received the first of 2 payments, as Mike indicated, and we anticipate the second payment in the neighborhood of the $340,000+ totaling $840,000 altogether by the end of this month. And the auditor for Westmount, on behalf of the county, Mike McCarthy, has confirmed that all of the calculations for the amount of money that was owed to Warren County for those 6 years, 2009 to 2014, were approved, and he has confirmed that these amounts and the calculation of those amounts are correct. So, again, it's one of those situations where it's a very positive result, and I do want to thank Ron Conover, who led the team, but also Kevin Garrety, Brian Rickenbach, Mary, and Mike McCarthy, who was very important in giving us the support from a financial standpoint to approach the Department of Health and be successful on the appeal. So this is very good news for the county, and just wanted to be here to answer any questions anybody may have.
Does anyone have any questions for Larry? Mr. Paltrow. Well, can I ask you, I'll allow it, without objection. Go ahead. Sure, Travis, of course.
I would like to ask you, while you're there taking a bow, for you and Mr. McCarthy. Originally, back in 2005, the estimate that from Siemens and a firm that Mr. McCarthy was part of back then was that this would be about $3 million coming in. It has since been reduced to, we think maybe $2 million will come in. We think maybe $767,000 will come in. And now, boy, this is good. We're getting more than we thought at $840,000, which to me is a lot less than $3 million. But go right ahead and continue to. Good job.
Again, I don't know about where those numbers came from, but back when the appeals were filed, the appeals were for 100% of what the Department of Health had disallowed for those years 2009 through 2014. And there is a process by which the Department of Health calculates out what the Medicaid rate should have been if you include those in the actual payment that the county received. So when you look at the Medicaid days for those years 2009 through 2014, and you multiply that by the Medicaid adjustment for the cogeneration expenses that were disallowed, it comes out to a number that is in the mid 800,000s. I know that the receivable that was put on the books for Westmount, as Mike indicated, was $700 and some odd thousand, which I'm sure was a conservative estimate of what, at that time, what that rate calculation would be. And it's not that we got more than we're entitled to. We got everything that we were entitled to, and that's because it's a pure math calculation of the rate that was adjusted times the number of Medicaid days from 2009 to 2014. And so it's not a windfall. It's we're receiving what we're entitled to. What is positive is the fact that the Department of Health accepted the county's position with regard to the entire cogeneration expense issue, and so we were successful in getting the Department of Health to agree with the county, and it's resulted in the total dollars that the county is receiving.
Thank you, Larry.
Mr. Chairman, I did forget one item.
Mr. Sokol, go right ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Supervisor Seaver for letting me chair the airport advisory group. If anybody has an affinity for T-hangers and FBOs and planes, step up, please. But the two items that were on the agenda were the Northeast Fly-In event, which is actually an excellent thing that could happen for Warren County. It's kind of like your car shows or your Americade. These are 350 aircrafts that go around to different locations, and they show off their planes, they buy accessories, they stay in our hotels, they go to the restaurants. So it's quite an event, and our airport manager, Ross, is working with Dr. Schwanker and Tom Clements already to hopefully get this event here for 2019, maybe 2020. So that could be a really good thing for Warren County. So that's all I had to add. Thank you.
You're welcome. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee did meet on October 27th. At that meeting, we reviewed the proposed 2018 budget for the most part. There was some changes between then and November 3rd when I presented the budget to the board, and the board adopted the tentative budget, but it was nothing major, nothing drastic. Also before you is the multi-year plan, or the updated version. And if you compare that to the previous plan, the bottom line in 2021 went from about $1.5 million to $6.2 million. So this budget, as it's put together now, does benefit our financial position in the future. However, not as well, I guess, as everybody would like it, but it does. So that's my report.
You're welcome. Supervisor Hyde?
Thank you, no report.
Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report.
Supervisor Gerard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one resolution from county facilities, and that's authorizing a memorandum of understanding between Warren County and the town of Queensbury for reimbursement of payroll expenses incurred during the 2017 Adirondack Hot Air Balloon Festival. It was a huge help. John, we really thank you. It required quite a bit of manpower for the parking privileges, etc. out there, and this year Queensbury stepped up and helped us with that, and it worked out flawlessly, so we're really happy about that. Also, Cornell Cooperative Building, their roof life expectancy has run the gamut, and our building to ground team has put on a new roof, and I thank them for that. We've been doing good things up there as far as the energy, the heating system, etc., and a lot of attention was paid to the building to get it more efficient. This is another parcel of getting us back up to snuff, along with them going back a lot of days, which is a great thing. And as far as the courts go, we had a court team meeting the other day. I thought Kevin Hayes was going to come and do a detailed explanation of where we were about proceedings.
I don't recall that.
Okay.
We can.
Basically summarizing with the courts, we're at the stage now where we can move family court into the new facility. That requires a lot of choreography, and the fact that the furniture involved in IT, etc., and court approval and all that. So what they're going to do is get all those members together. They have a timetable of somewhere in early February, they think. What this would facilitate is jumping ahead so that we get to phase 2 once they're out of the family court that exists today, and into the new facility we can start demoing and renovation, and it would move it all that much further along. It also would keep our contractors on site so they wouldn't have to mobilize for some other job, and we think that would make everything more efficient. So we will be reporting to you how we do with the courts and the timetable, etc. And am I missing anything, Ron, as far as that goes? But we feel 3 months ahead of schedule because we had good winter last year. We were able to do a lot of concrete work, etc. And we were off and running in the spring, so things are good. The budget so far, minimal changes, and we're right on target. So I'm very happy with the progress so far.
Would you like to have Mr. Hayes at your next facilities meeting for a complete
Maybe
report?
that's where he was coming to the facilities. I thought he was going to come to the whole board, and just so that the board understood the intricacies of this move. If it will require possibly some weekend time, possibly some nights, possibly shutting down the courts, but all that's interactive with the courts themselves. Is how we can function and move forward with it. There's a lot of there's security issues, etc. So all that has to be put together, and it's pretty difficult move that's going to happen. And I think you said it best. Nobody likes moving. It's a difficult thing to begin with, and this has a lot of parts. So they're working on that right now, and I think with the way we've done it so far, it's going to work out good. The comparative with my tenure here, we did human resource building over here. And we made some changes as far as clerk of the works. I just want to say this. And we're using our people and our facilities people as far as we move forward, working together with Clark Patterson and Supervisor Monty has put in a ton of time watching what goes on. And this has really worked and functioned fabulous for us. We know what's being put into the building. Our people are going to work on it and inherit it after, have good understanding of where we're at with everything. And we've worked well with the contractors and the timetable. So I can't think of, comparative to what we ran into with some issues there where we had drop ceilings that were dropping. We had windows that weren't insulated. We had the effervescent, bubbling, stuff that happens with, we're not saying that that's not going to happen here, but we are generally right on top of all this. And our staffing of Kevin Hajos, the engineering department, and Frank Morehouse, the buildings and grounds, has done a fabulous job.
Good. So I think it's probably advisable at this stage maybe to ask Mr. Hajos to come to the next facilities meeting, at least the supervisors that are on facilities, and usually there's a good group at facilities just to hear the report.
The way he left it with Matt Smollett from Clark Patterson, they're going to get together and they're going to list some of the difficulties, and then they're going to schedule a meeting with the courts, all the judges, all the staff, and they're going to get their input, and then they'll meet with the court team again and the contractors. So they have good plans. They did say that the timetable looks around about February, and that's what they're shooting.
I think it's a good time for an update and for them to roll out that plan and the elements, and just so the supervisors can see it. So we can arrange that. Mr. Montesi.
The only other comment that Dan and I encountered was that along with this plan, the courts have ordered new furniture, and we just couldn't get a handle on when that stuff would be coming in, and that's an important part of this move too. So getting the judges and the courts involved in this timing is important.
Thank you, gentlemen.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Good report. Report of the county administrator.
First, I'd like to recognize 3 employees with milestone years of service. Stephanie Dean, probation, 20 years. Jerry Bellinger, Countryside, 20 years. And Steve Dewar, Huntsville Dispatcher Sheriff's Office, 30 years of service. So congratulations to them for their years of service. Another busy month, attended a lot of meetings. A couple meetings of note. I went to APA local government meeting with Supervisor Simpson. And then after that, we do an AATV, Association of Towns and Village meeting directly following the APA local government. And we're happy that Proposition 3 passed in New York State. It will make a difference to us up here. It could have an impact, or will have an impact on the Middleton Bridge and Horton, so going forward. So we're happy about that. Those meetings are important to us, and I think of note, Matt is in line to become the president of, or the chairman of the AATV next year, so that'll be good for Warren County and good for Matt Simpson. Other than that, attended a lot of committee meetings and also a couple inter-county legislative meetings, the one in Hamilton County, and then yesterday we were fortunate enough to go to St. Lawrence County, and we were, even though it's a long trip, it's 3 hours one way up, we were able to see a wood pallet manufacturing company up in St. Lawrence County, in St. Lawrence. Very interesting how they make these pellets. They took wood fiber chips and they meld them together. There's no adhesives in the process. It's all where the fibers from the different chips, whether it be hardwood, softwood chips, meld together and they make chips and they sell. It's probably what you buy at Home Depot and Lowe's, and that's made up in St. Lawrence County. Although it is a depressed market, and we've all seen where a lot of logs go up the Northway to Canada, and that has hurt our business in New York State somewhat. But it's a very interesting trip, very long trip. No snow, and no accidents, but we did miss Supervisor Montesi driving skills. They kind of gave me a shot there at one corner there, but I never went over the yellow line.
So he says.
Yeah. But that's my report. Busy month and a good trip yesterday.
Report by the county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing to report.
No report. Reading of communication.
Proposed resolution numbers 420 through 460 were mailed. Proposed resolution numbers 432 and 456 were amended after mailing. The revised resolutions were emailed to the board and posted to the county website earlier in the week. A motion is needed to approve the amendments to resolution numbers 432 and 456.
Chair will entertain a motion to amend 432 and was that 436?
456.
456. Mr. Montesi, Mr. Thomas, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Okay, proposed resolution numbers 461 through 467 were approved after mailing. Copies were emailed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the county website earlier in the week. Printed copies are placed in your folders. A motion is needed to bring proposed resolution numbers 461 through 467 to the floor.
We need a motion to bring 461 and 467 to the floor. Mr. Strauss, just a moment. Mr. Strauss on the second. Mr. Thomas, discussion. Mr. Beatty?
I'd like to have 467 voted, roll call vote pulled separately.
I'll be calling for roll calls. That was 467?
To be pulled separately in roll call.
Okay, we'll get there. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Braemar?
Comment on this motion.
Yes.
Okay. As was alluded to before, several of the committee members did want to do second interviews before selecting a final candidate. And I will be voting no on bringing this to the floor because I don't think this resolution should be considered today. We should have second interviews to hear more from the final candidates and get a greater consensus from the supervisors on both this process and the final selection. So I'll be voting no on the roll call for 467.
All righty. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of bringing 461 through 467 to the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed, raise your hands. The ayes have it.
Could I have a point of order?
Point of order.
What was the count on the weighted vote, please?
The noes, please raise your hands again.
Are we not having a roll call vote?
This is on a motion to bring them to the floor. We're not on the resolution yet.
I understand.
But we can.
I'd like to have a roll call vote on whether we bring it to the floor, Mr. Chairman. I think that's pretty clear.
So you're requesting a roll call on the resolution to bring these 5 to the floor?
The motion wasn't amended to pull out 467.
No, the question before the board is whether to bring these to approve these, to bring them to the floor for consideration.
Right, yes, a roll call on that, please.
All right, we have a request for a roll call on this. The clerk can read the roll.
Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
No.
Mr. Brock?
No.
Mr. McDonald?
No.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sopel?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
There were 665 votes in favor, 299 against, and 36 absent. The motion passes.
The motion passes. All righty. Now I'll ask anyone in the audience wishing to address any of the resolutions presently before the board. Mr. Whitehead?
Actually, I'd like to address 2 of them, if I may. Just quickly on 467, I would concur with Supervisor Braemar that you probably ought to be examining the pool of candidates. I'm not disputing, and I would have no way of knowing, whether or not of the pool you're picking the best. But be my observation that I don't believe any county in this state or probably any other state would be considering someone has been a lawyer for 5 years to be county attorney. I mean, as good as Mary might be, 5 years. It would seem to me that the pool needs to be expanded, and I would think that you would do just exactly what Mr. Loeb was saying earlier. You should be trying to hire the best people for all of these positions, and I would agree with that. On 456, the occupancy tax, it was interesting because I note that there's going to be less funds going to some of the bigger towns. Notably, Bolton and Queensbury are being knocked back from some $200,000 to like $60,000. I think this is a good idea. because from what I could see, that $200,000 was not spent responsibly, and hopefully this body can spend it more responsibly. But I also note that there's $35,000 in the 2018 Queensbury budget for using occupancy tax, and if it's used for exactly the things it was used for last year, it ought to be of some concern to you. Over $13,000 went to pay for fertilizer for Jenkins Field. What that has to do with occupancy tax is, I don't know. But again, good reason why you should be taking this money away. Similar sum went to pay for the printing of color brochures talking about different activities that are available at the town, and also the cost of mailing all of those color brochures to the residents of the town. Now, what that has to do with occupancy tax, I don't know. But $35,000, to get that at occupancy tax, they have to, and I'm talking about the hotels, would have to rent $855,000 in rooms in order to get the money to pay for the fertilizer and the brochures that were sent to me. I personally would think they should take that out of my taxes, Queensbury, and not out of occupancy taxes, which are important. So, I like what I see here. Bolton's been cut, Queensbury's been cut, Lake George still seems to have quite a bit. Maybe that's justified, maybe that's not. I'm not qualified to answer that.
Let him speak.
So, actually, if I'm saying something wrong, I'd love to hear it.
No. Okay. You're allowed to speak.
All right. Well, that's of course. That's what I have to say about those two.
All right, thank you. Mm-hmm. Anyone else wishing to address the board at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say hi, everyone. I look forward to working with all that are... I'm Brad McGowan, and I'm looking forward to working with those who are staying. I'm wishing those that are leaving that thank you for your service, and hopefully you'll be back, or if you're officially retiring and giving it all up, hey, please enjoy it, and call me if you need help on that bathroom. So I will. But I have a question on 467. I'm a little concerned, getting into this and how it was done, and what I based on my voting or my campaigning was, the transparency and really looking for the people's voice, giving the government back to the people, and I feel this is being rushed. In my opinion, of we have someone that's going to be coming in and taking over for the 2-year terms that that I'm going to be here, and the other ones, and I would have liked a better opportunity to maybe assess some of the people that I'm going to have to be working with along in all fairness. Nothing against but I know nothing much, and was it open, was it a closed executive session? I don't know. I don't remember seeing where I had the opportunity to to review this, and like I said, coming in new, I'm not sure of all my processes, but I really would like to hold off, have everyone hold off on this until the new board can come in, and because we have a lot of new faces coming in next month in January, so one more month, I don't see where it will hurt everything. All right, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board? Bill? Supervisor-elect Loeb.
Yes, good morning. Bill Loeb, Glens Falls. Actually, on top of what I said earlier regarding its 467, that's the issue about the county attorney. The resolutions that you usually address and debate have gone through the process, and you're at a point where you're saying, I like to support this decision, or I do not want to support this decision. But usually, when you get to that point, you've already gone through the process. And I recall there were times I'd be sitting on that side, looking at Mr. Westcott on this side, and we were in disagreement. But there were a couple times where he said, I'm just not comfortable with this process. And just based on that one interjection into the discussion, the board put it on hold because, and I agree, I voted for it to put it on hold. If you get to a point where you have supervisors who are not comfortable with the process that they're involved with, that almost borders on dysfunction. We should all, it's a knockdown, drag out, but we should all be part of the process and be comfortable with the end result of that process to the point where we're saying, okay, now we've got candidates, now we've got a decision we're going to make up or down. And what I'm seeing so far today is there are several supervisors who are actually uncomfortable with the process. And I think the full board should embrace that and say, maybe we should hold off till everybody's comfortable and all of those backroom questions are answered right up front. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address the board? There being no one, the chair will ask, we already had one request of 467 be a roll call. Any other requests for roll call? Mr. Simpson.
Thank you. 466, please.
466, a roll call. Any other requests for roll call? Ms. Seaver.
461, 456, and 432.
461, 456.
And 432, please.
Is that 432? 432. Roll calls. Any other requests for roll call? There being none, now I will open up to the board for discussion on resolutions. Anyone wishing to discuss resolution? Mr. Simpson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 466 is authorizing an agreement with Napoli and Skolnick. And I had some discussion in committee, and I thought about it, and I just want everybody to realize that I don't think this addresses the issue that we're trying to address. We're pretty much giving up all our opportunity to deal with the problem by committing ourselves to 25% of whatever money is decided in a settlement a few years down the road. And when you think about it, we're fighting this fight on both ends. We're not only paying for it in a lawsuit against the people that we're trying to bring into line to provide economical health services for our community, health insurance, cost of the drugs that we, may need. And it seems like we're fighting those costs here at this lowest level. Health insurance is a big issue every day at our level and the federal level. But then we're going to start this will be multi-billion dollars across the country because it's every county in the state, in the country. Every municipality is fighting this problem. And I think it might be worth considering looking at something out of the box on how to really address the opiate addiction problem. I just don't see this as a path that is proven that in the past that has worked, and I can't support this. But I would.
Any other discussion on 466, Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes, I don't know what the alternative is. The out-of-the-box solution is that to deal with this issue, you need dollars and cents. You need revenue, okay? And it is my opinion that we have a group of drug companies that have gotten very, very rich and have attempted to, in the past, to convince the consuming public that everything is just wonderful by just popping one of these OxyContins into your mouth, and people have gotten hooked on it. So the question is, how do we as a county deal with it, and how do we, other than recouping some dollars and cents, meet the challenges going forward in terms of mental health, in terms of EMS, in terms of all of the services that result as a byproduct of opioid addiction. So unfortunately, that may not sound like it's out of the box, but that's the reality.
Any further discussion on 466, Mr. Sokol?
Yeah, this was a resolution that did come out of finance, and I think the underlying premise behind this was that this OxyContin was supposed to be used in short-term cures. However, there were 4 categories. There was the manufacturer, there was the distributor, there was the doctor, and there was the company that made the drugs. So the basic contention is that the doctors, I don't want to misspeak and I don't want to say anything that's wrong, but they are giving the patients long-term care, okay, instead of short-term care. So they're giving them the wrong drug, which is an addictive drug. And hence, now you're seeing all these heroin addicts. We're seeing young children pass before our eyes. And the whole idea behind this litigation is to stop all that stuff. And there has been successes. That one group, the Boyajian group that I brought up, they were successful in $75 million lawsuit on behalf of 5,000 claimants. So there is success out there behind this. So I feel it's a worthwhile resolution to put forth. Thank you.
Further discussion on 466? Did I see Ms. Seaver?
Thank you. I would agree with Supervisor Simpson. I was reluctant in committee on this vote, and I appreciate the time to have the different firms come in and present and the information. But my concern goes back to just looking at the tobacco settlement and that committee that's set up now. And in fact, I don't believe the money, while some goes to the intended recipients and in the way that the law was formed, it certainly isn't a perfect process, and we're offsetting other expenses. And I'm not confident that this money, despite Kevin Garrety's amendment and suggestion that it goes directly to first responders, I just don't see how that will be upheld years from now. And I'm not willing to take that gamble, so I'll vote no on that as well.
Any further discussion? Mr. Leggett?
Just to clarify on this process, that the county desires to pursue litigation to gain funds and revenue, and from sitting through the mental health committee with presentation of the opioid heroin addiction problem within the county, and the county is already spending a lot of money because of this problem, that the hope is to recoup some funds from the folks that basically perpetrated the problem. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe the litigation is intended to make the taxpayers whole for the costs associated with the issue. And how those funds are utilized once they're received, well, that's a question as well.
But the intent to go after that.
That's the intent. Anyone else wish to comment on 466? Mr. Brock?
Yeah, if you listen to some of the people who are part of the drug industry, they seem to have been educated in how to achieve the highest profit, no matter what the morality of it is. And the only way to affect their thinking is to punish them through money. And I think that the only way to get through to them and to affect their decision-making in the future is through litigation. I don't think it solves the problem overall, but it does those CEOs who are just simply money-oriented and don't really care about the morality of it. This will affect their thinking somehow. And so I think that this 466 is just one way of hopefully modifying their behavior and making them less aggressive in terms of selling it. And so I think it's a good thing in that respect.
Supervisor Mcdonald?
I'll vote for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do support this resolution. Is it going to be the ultimate solution to curing this ill? Probably not. I think that's a fair consensus. However, it's very important that it be seen that we are taking a stance on this issue. For me, that's what this resolution stands for, is taking a position, an aggressive position at that we do not accept what this epidemic is doing to our communities. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Simpson, Supervisor Simpson.
I think what we have to consider is how do we measure our success? Is it by winning a big settlement and in turn creating
higher medical costs for people that we're actually trying to help. I really think that there's another solution out there, maybe using the funds that we're expending, the cost that it's costing us now as a society, to focus on what's creating this problem where people are relying on these drugs. These drugs are very beneficial for the people they're intended for, you know, end-of-life scenarios. You have to look at the problem of how that was created and then what makes society turn to these things and the abuse. Because it's, you know, it goes from the prescribed drugs to the heroin. It's all interrelated. And we're going to raise the cost of these. We're going to probably push more people into the heroin, and we still haven't solved the problem. And in the end, we're all going to be paying for this as consumers of health benefits. So I see this endless circle, and we're caught up in, you know, there's no dollar out there that we can't find a home for, and litigation, and it's just sad that this is what it's got to go to.
Supervisor Beatty.
I concur with Mr. Simpson. I concur with Mr. Mcdevitt. I think they both make very valid points, and why can't we do both? I think Mr. Brock makes a great point. When you falsely market these drugs that lead to millions of our citizens being hooked on it through false marketing, that's a no-brainer. They definitely did that. They hired the best doctors in the world, and they can be bought, and they signed off. And I definitely think they need to be punished. I agree with Mr. Simpson that we need to do something more locally and be more aggressive in helping our fellow. There's nobody in this room that doesn't know somebody who's had a challenge with opiates. Nobody in this room, I guarantee it. So why can't we do both? Why can't we pursue hurting them financially, which I definitely want to do, and why can't we get more aggressive in helping the people in Warren County? So if any solutions you have, Matt, I would be 100% in agreement with you to help our fellow citizens. So I guess I'm saying I'm going to probably vote for this, yes, but I'm also in favor of Mr. Simpson taking a more active role of us locally in Warren County.
Any further discussion on 466? There being none, I'll close discussion on 466. Is any discussion on any of the resolutions? Ms. Braemar?
Thank you. I have a question on 460. I'd just like to know where that came from and what. I don't recall seeing that kind of thing before. Maybe I just don't remember.
Resolution 460 is something we do annually in coordination with the budget. That's the tax that's levied for the city of Glens Falls. So we do that by resolution, and that way the tax collector, we send that to the city, and that way they know what to include in their budget.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome. Any other discussion on resolutions? Ms. Seaver?
I have a couple resolutions I'd like to discuss, but first, for my reasons stated previously, I'd like to make a motion to table 467.
We have a motion to table 467. Is there a second to that motion? Ms. Braemar? Motion to table takes precedent. All discussion ceases. I'll call for a roll call on the motion to table the appointment of Mary to the position of County Administrator. Mary Cassane.
Mr. Mcdevitt?
No.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Strauss?
No.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Gerard? Chairman Conover?
No.
That only achieved a vote of 403 votes. There's 561 against and 36 absent.
Motion to table fails. Any further discussion on resolution?
What was that number again, please?
There were 403 votes in favor of tabling, 561 against, and 36 absent.
Ms. Seaver, you had other resolutions to discuss.
Thank you. I will be voting no on both 456 and 432. I'll also be, do you want me to take these one at a time, or can I just...
Yeah, no, I would rather, do you have anything to say on 456?
The comments are the same.
Okay, comments are the same. Any other further discussions on 456? I'm sorry.
Can I say them?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was your comment. No, go right ahead. I apologize.
Thank you. We've had many discussions regarding 456 and 432 over the years I've been on the board, but specifically regarding occupancy tax. For the same reasons, and I applaud the efforts put together this year by the budget, but for the same reasons of these deals being made behind the scenes, I have a lot of respect for the supervisors that do the homework, that talk with your constituents, but I really feel like this year with occupancy tax, things have been pushed through, and I can't support this ongoing effort to not listen to the experts in our community. So I will not only vote no on 456, 432, but also on this year's budget.
Alrighty, let's take these one at a time. Any further discussion on 432? There being none, I'll close the debate on 432 and on 456. Any further discussion on 456, Mr. Dickinson?
Hopefully I'll make this short and sweet. I've spent a lot of time with community experts who are all in favor of this resolution, so I don't know where that comes from. There's no behind-the-scenes effort here. I don't know where that comes from. This is a chance to move us in the direction that the business people have been touting in their business plan that a lot of you have seen. I've discussed it with a number of those proponents, and they are all on board. They would like to go quicker, but they are in favor of what we're doing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion on 456, Mr. Mcdonald?
Not 456.
Let's just finish 456. Any further discussion on 456? Ms. Seaver?
Just briefly, I think we have a difference of opinion. I've certainly heard from members in the community that are unhappy with this, and those that have received occupancy tax awards, that, again, they weren't able to put an application in prior to awards, so many of them actually were requesting or planning to request for more funds than they were allotted. I still think that process is flawed. And going back to when I voted no against BB, B, and G, or whatever the acronym was, but we didn't take their advice. We did another report, and we didn't follow it, and we just do our own thing. So if you go back and you look at that report, I still think the recommendation was to combine all those dollars, was to look at the DMOs, to fund those entities appropriately, and I don't feel that in the spirit of the money we spent on that report that we're even following those recommendations. But I know it won't make a difference on the final vote, but for the record.
Any further discussion on 456? There being none, I'll close discussion on 456. Any discussion on any other resolutions? Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak to 467.
467.
Now, I did just vote in favor of tabling that motion. My interest there was because I feel like a position like that is very important. I think that there needs to be a very strong consensus for that position. And I would have been in favor of giving supervisors, current supervisors, not future supervisors, current supervisors, the chance to vet that process. However, I do support Mary. I think experience is only as valuable as determined by a given individual. I think experience does not prevent mistakes. It does not prevent missteps or ill-advised judgments. It is not the end-all, be-all in determining the validity of a candidate for a position. After all, we are not discussing a candidate who has zero experience. In fact, she has more experience in Warren County than any of the other applicants. One of the applicants, 22 years ago, was handed not just the keys, but the blueprints to build an office. I think we have an office here. I think we have a candidate in Mary that has been mentored. I think she has a strong support system in the county. And I think she will rise to the occasion and provide excellent workmanship. Mayor, I support your candidacy. And I hope that you do a great job if the board approves your position. Thank you.
467, Mr. Beatty.
Yeah. Wow. The most important job in this county, and it's reflected in the pay, is the county attorney. This board interviewed for 20 to 30 minutes the most important position in this county and said, we're good. Let's go forward. I think Mary could do a great job, but I'm not sure. And I'm not sure that I haven't had the opportunity to vet the other ones. Was I at that meeting? No. I was up in Toronto honoring our native son, Dave Strait, who was inducted in the Hall of Fame, and I apologize. I couldn't be in two places at once. But to not give me or any other supervisor in this room the opportunity to second interview final candidates for the most important position in this county, to say 20 minutes is all we need? Are we that shallow? Are we that naive to think, 20 minutes is good, let's roll? I'm embarrassed that I even have to be saying this, that we should have second interviews on final top candidates. This is the most important position. One mistake by the county attorney can cost this county hundreds of thousands of dollars. We saw the job Mr. Dusick did, and I don't want to go any further than that. But that was very scary. He made mistakes, and it cost us money. And so Mary may be our final choice. I'd like to sit and interview her. I'd like to sit and interview the other final candidates. Is that so wrong? Is that a bad thing? The top position, that we give everybody the opportunity to interview her? More than 20 minutes? I'll have a list of questions. So I'd like this board to just reconsider and maybe use some common sense and say, hey, maybe that does make sense. I don't care if you like me or not. I could care less. But let's do the right thing for the town, the county of Warren. And let's actually fully vet the top position in this county. And if anybody says it's not the top position, then why are we paying the top pay? Thank you.
You're welcome. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's very unfortunate we're discussing a person's performance in open session. We've been down this path, and it's been damaging and hurtful to people. I think it's irresponsible. And my point in bringing up the motion to table or this particular resolution and the process was about the flawed process, not about anyone's individual performance. And I'm disappointed to see that we're discussing it. However, the process is flawed. So to not allow supervisors who just work their tails off to get elected an opportunity to sit in and listen to those interviews, both for the county attorney and for the county administrator, is wrong. It's a 2-year term. If there were second interviews, certainly we'd have an opportunity to talk in more depth of case examples and case scenarios of how you would handle things. That time was scheduled. That time was canceled. So I think that it's critical that we recognize you have a new board coming in. And many of those new supervisors are here and they want to be part of it. Do we really think that they don't know anything? They know a lot, and their constituents believe in them. I think it's unfortunate that we're not going to allow interviews to continue to take place and invite them into the discussion, or at least get their feedback. But the process here is flawed. This isn't about a person's performance. This is about how we go about hiring top positions in our county. We have another position coming up for county administrator. Again, I would urge you to please consider involving your elected that are going to be sitting on this board, having daily interactions with those individuals. So, Mary, I apologize if any of this came about you personally. It should never be. This is about the process.
Thank you. Supervisor Strauss.
Yes, I like transparency and openness. The process that I'm not comfortable with is that one of these candidates was lobbying some of our supervisors to assure he gets this position. I don't find that transparent. I don't find that open.
Who are you talking about?
I don't like those
Doug,
kinds
please. Go ahead, Mr. Strauss.
I don't like, in my opinion, that's not ethical, and I'm entitled to my opinion. Now, so I don't like those 3 men in a room type of manipulation. I've seen it. Who's going to get what? Okay, I've seen it. But I haven't seen it with Mary. You know, Mary is a person I can trust.
I thought we weren't talking about performances on individuals here, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Strauss has the floor.
But we are going to talk about individuals now on the floor?
In any event, we're talking about an appointment of an individual that...
I would ask that you stay away from specific individuals, but...
And I haven't...
No, I don't believe you crossed the line, not the line I have.
All right. Well, in any event, I have found Mary to be honest, ethical, intelligent.
We go to executive session. Motion to go into executive session. We're going to talk about performance.
Just a moment. Mr. Strauss has the
I'm
floor.
just giving my opinion. Okay? And so I support Resolution 467.
Thank you. Discussion on other resolutions?
467.
Claudia, Supervisor. I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Leggett.
Yeah, if I can speak to Resolution 467. Process has been brought up. I am a member of that committee. I do believe that process was carried out accordingly. We have the Director of Human Resources here who is also involved in the process. If need be, I'm sure she can lay out for the public of what the process is. But we advertise, we take applications. Applications are reviewed. This has been a two-step review process that has gone through. 4 people were selected out of the group of applicants. There was an interview process for those 4. And the committee made a choice. Some people are not on the committee that are not happy with what the committee has done. But the committee system is part of the process. We have followed the process. And now there was also appeal to include future supervisors onto that. If we were to carry out that logic, we would not vote on a budget this year as well, because that budget affects people who have yet to take a seat at this board. So I think we go ahead. I think the process has been carried out, and it has been transparent. It is no different than other positions that have also needed to be filled.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Ms. Braemar.
On 467, I will be voting no. Experience is not everything, but a lack of depth and breadth of legal knowledge is something to be concerned about in the county attorney's office. And I am going to take the position as a lawyer. I can't even serve as the president of the Bar Association in Warren County until I've had 10 years experience. And that's just a nonprofit organization that manages other attorneys. This is our most important legal position in the county. And we had other candidates, different candidates. I won't get into it here because we are in open session, but I did want the public to know why I'm going to vote no, and I wanted Mary to know that as well. And also, if, Mr. Reichenbach is going to continue being in the county attorney's office, I think we need to renegotiate that contract. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other comments on 467?
I have a different resolution.
Okay. That being the case, I'll close discussion on 467. Discussion on other resolutions, Mr. Beatty. Supervisor Beatty.
457, the budget. I think Frank Thomas did a yeoman's job. I've got no issue with Mr. Thomas and the work he did, but I have a conscience. And to ask for just under a 3% tax increase when the most vulnerable people in our society, our seniors, live paycheck, monthly Social Security checks, they're getting a whopping 2% next year. The year before that, they got 0.3%. We went up on our budget 1.35. In 2015, they didn't get a dime increase. We went up 1.51. So for 3 years, the last 3 years, it's 6% basically. The county has increased taxes, and seniors have got a whopping 2.3% increase. Now, every one of us has mothers and fathers in here, brothers and sisters. do we really want them, do you look at them and say, I don't have a problem, Mom, you're going to go backwards. You're going to have to eat less or get less medicine or whatever you got to do, but we're increasing the taxes. You know, could we have done better? You know, we have an FBO saying, hey, I'll lease the airport and save you $400,000 a year over a year ago. We buy a courthouse extension, 21,000 feet, $20 million project. Could we have done it a lot less expensive? Yes, that's a no-brainer. And so then we say, well, we did a great job, and we're only going to increase taxes 3% for you. Now, again, Mom and Dad, I know you're going backwards. You got to live with it, because we did the best job we could. So I'm going to sleep tonight knowing I'm going to vote definitely no on this budget, and I'm going to propose next year that we don't ever increase a budget higher than what the Social Security increase is going to be. We got to use a little common sense and take care of some people once in a while. Just once in a while. But I'll get that turned down, I'm sure. But I'll propose that for next year's budget. Thank you.
Any other discussion on 457? Mr. Brock?
Yeah, I have a question for Supervisor Thomas. It's just a question of fact.
Give it a shot.
It basically has to do with the fund balance. When school districts have a shortage on their property tax, we fill the gap. Right. We have a certain measure that we want to hit. Do you know what that is? Is it $6 million, $7 million that we need to keep so we don't have to borrow money to do that?
Yeah, I think our plan calls for, I think it's between 10 and 16. I think 10 is on the low end, and 16 million is the high end. So
okay,
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that's all I want.
Any other discussions regarding 457? Mr. Leggett.
Supervisor Beatty brought up something about those that are at the low end of the economic scale being adversely impacted. I would like to point out that one of the things that the county does take care of is public health. And on that, if I read that correctly, that this year's budget is even less in that cuts have been made, but it's a significant amount altogether, $15,700,000, and these are to take care of people that need help in being taken care of, and this is what the county does. So not everybody is adversely affected by tax increase. They are taken care of by it.
Any other discussion regarding 457? There being none, I'll close discussion on 457. Any discussion on any other resolutions? There being none, we're going to vote on resolution.
Resolution 429, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 430, amending Warren County budget for 2017. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 432, authorizing attendance at 2018 in-state and out-of-state and Canadian motor coach trade shows for Tourism Department personnel. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
No.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 448, amending Table of Organization and Warren County Salary and Compensation Plan for 2017. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard? Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 449 is a second amending the Table of Organization and Warren County Salary and Compensation Plan for 2017. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 450, increasing capital project H369 airfield guidance sign replacement. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
No.
Mr. Brock?
Abstain.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 452, increasing capital project H353 County Bridge abatement and painting. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 453, increasing capital project H331 County Bridge projects. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 455, approving and adopting the Warren County Sewer District Assessment Roll for 2018. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 456, approving the 2018 occupancy tax spending plan. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 457, adopting budget for fiscal year 2018. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 459, adopting salary and compensation plan for 2018. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 461, introducing proposed local law number 1 of 2018. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard? Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 464, authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenue Gaslight Village parking fees. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrety?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 466, authorizing an agreement with Napoli and Skolnick to represent Warren County with regard to opioid litigation. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
Yes.
Mr. Brock?
Yes.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
No, I do agree with Matt and Rachel on this one, but hopefully we'll do the right thing. I'll vote yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Thanks. Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 467, appointing Mary Elizabeth Cassane as Warren County Attorney. Mr. Mcdevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Braemar?
No.
Mr. Brock?
No.
Mr. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fraser?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Mr. Montesi?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Mary, I think you're going to do a fine job, and you're a fine young woman, and for the reasons that we talked on the phone personally, I'm voting no.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Gerard?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
That passes by a vote of 622 in favor.
622 in favor. Thank you. Alrighty. Yep, a motion from Mr. Garrity to approve the balance. Do we have a second? Mr. Dickinson, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Privilege of the floor is offered to the members of the audience. Mr. Whitehead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to bring up a few facts regarding the settlement that we just got from the state, or not the settlement, but the amount of reimbursement on the cogen that we got. Bring a few facts to your attention. Back in 2005 or so, 6, when this was being discussed, Siemens came to you and said, I'd like you to sign a letter of intent. It's going to cost us a lot of money to do the engineering on this. So we want you to pay for that engineering if you decide that you won't go ahead with a good deal. And a good deal is that we can provide you at least a budget-neutral proposal that says that you won't lose a dime on this thing. So naturally enough, that's what happened. A budget-neutral proposal came in, and we accepted it. Well, in that budget-neutral proposal, there was well over $3 million in Medicaid reimbursements. You heard today we got $840,000. We have collected a few $100,000 additionally to that some years back, but it falls well short of the over $3 million that we were promised. So this is really not the Christmas present. I mean, it's better than nothing, and I've certainly been pushing for us to take this because we were due this. And, from that standpoint, it's good, but we have lost a lot of money on that. A couple years later, Siemens brought us another proposal, this time on the Municipal Center. This time, your treasurer, Mr. O'Keefe, at that time, sent letters back and forth to the board. Are you kidding? He's saying, look at this proposal. They're proposing that you're going to make $5 this year, and another $5, and you're going to spend $4 million to make $5? You're nuts. he was ignored by the board. These are the kind of things that you have to pay more attention to when they come up. Recently, we got a similar proposal over in the town of Queensbury. 15-year proposal. We make $1 a year for the first 14 years. I don't think we're not going to buy that thing. I'm sure we're not going to buy that into that deal, which is good. However, we do have to now pay, on this letter of intent, the engineering for this, or at least maybe we will. But, you know, the $21,000 is going to be cheap versus the, you know, $1 million that we would have had to put in otherwise. So be careful. And when people like the treasurer comes to you and says that, you know, there might be issues, pay attention. That's what I'd like to get across. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehouse. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Board members, announcements. Mr. Beatty?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of the fact that Queensbury has had some challenges with hiding audits and scathing audits from the state, I'm going to ask you right now, Mr. Conover, do we have any audits being done in any departments in this county that this board is not aware of? Because I don't want to hear something down the road that, well, it was happening, but we forgot to tell you, the dog ate the homework. I want to know now, are there any audits being done by the state in any departments? If not, well, you should know. So I'm asking you point blank. I hope there's not, but if there are, I want to be apprised of it.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Swan, maybe you would like to respond to this as well, but I'll take my shot at it. Well, first of all, we have an internal auditor that audits all claims. In addition to that, the comptroller comes in periodically and does expansive audit. The last time they were here for months and months and months. Do you know how long? Remember how long?
The state controller's office came in and did basically a full-blown audit of the county last spring. 2 springs ago. 2 years ago. And the only thing that came out of that was that I was criticized for not handling the occupancy tax enforcement properly, and there was some questions in weights and measures, and that was it. And all those audits were given to everybody on this board, and that's the only ones that I'm aware of at this point in time.
Good. So there's no other audits being currently, okay.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right.
All righty. Very good. Motion to adjourn. Ms. Fraser, Mr. Dickinson, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.